Hi everyone, welcome back. In this video, we are talking about PoE switches or power over Ethernet. Now, before you understand a power over Ethernet switch, which it really isn't that hard to understand. I mean, what the switch does is in the name. It provides power over Ethernet. But before you understand why we would need something like this, I want you to take a step back and I want you to think about all the different endpoints that you're plugging in into your network that require power. Things like IP phones. So you probably have voice over IP, so you have all these different IP phones, Cisco IP phones all around your network. You most likely have security cameras that are in your facility, whether those are in your corporate whether they're in your corporate office space, or maybe you have a warehouse or a manufacturing facility and you have IP cameras all over the place. You also have wireless access points, right? Now, all of those devices require power. They have to be plugged into something in order to give it power. Nothing has wireless power. So, well, you could have solar, but that's besides the point. So I want you to think about how you would get power to those devices. You could have an electrician come in and you could run power all over that facility and have physical outlets everywhere where you're plugging those devices in. That's not very practical. It also is very, very expensive to do that. You could have power over Ethernet injectors. So what that would look like is, you have your, we'll just say EP here for endpoint, and that's plugged into a switch somewhere. What you would do is you would actually have a power over Ethernet injector somewhere in the middle. I'll just put INJ for injector. And this would be plugged into, some type of power outlet. And that would inject power into that Ethernet cable. So that is an option. You can have these injectors that you buy. And generally what they'll do is they'll have an in where you plug in the cord from the switch. They'll have another in where you might plug the power. And then on the out, they'll have, where you're actually plugging in that endpoint device, like again, an IP phone or your access point. But a PoE switch removes the necessity to have an injector. So a PoE switch removes this and just provides power directly through the Ethernet cable. This allows us to avoid multiple different cable runs. This allows us to avoid having, again, that electrician come out and put power somewhere in the vicinity so we can have an injector. It just allows us to connect that device directly into that switch. Now, there are some things you have to take into account when you're getting a PoE switch. Depending on the amount of devices that you're going to have, depending on the amount of draw, in other words, power that they're going to be using, you're going to want to make sure that your PoE switch has the ability to provide that much power. I've seen in numerous deployments where, we said, okay, we're going to have this entire switch is going to be filled with voice over IP phones, or VoIP phones for short. It's going to be filled with access points. It's going to be filled with all these different, PoE devices. But the switch was not spec'd out to be able to provide that much power. Now, they do have switches, 48-port PoE Cisco switches, that are built to provide power across the entire switch. Again, when you buy that switch, you're going to want to make sure that it has the ability to provide power across all these different ports. When you go for a smaller switch, for example, sometimes you can go with a 24-port switch or smaller, and maybe 5 or 6 or 8 of those ports. Usually it's an even number, so it may be 2, 4, 6, 8. It'll be a chunk of those ports that are PoE ports, and the rest might not be. So again, just check that when you're actually going to purchase a switch. But PoE switches are really, really easy to understand. What they're doing is they are allowing us to have a single cable here, plug in to the switch, plug into the device, and it's going to provide power through the Ethernet cable rather than you having to either provide power from another source.